Hey there and welcome back to another MCU video. And in the last couple of days, we saw the release of the latest Marvel streaming series on Disney+, She-Hulk, with the release of the debut episode, A Normal Amount of Rage. And coming into this, I was hopeful the show would be good. The Hulk storyline's never really been one that I was all that interested in, and don't get me wrong, I enjoyed watching him smash shit and rage, but that was about it. And so, the idea of getting even more Hulk stuff, I wasn't really sure about it, but I was willing to give it a go. And from what I've seen, people seem to have really loved it. It seems to have been a smash hit. And so now, having watched the first episode, I feel like a bit of an outlier. Because whilst I don't think it was bad, I don't know, I thought it was okay. To me, it's nothing all that special or groundbreaking. Like, I had fun watching it, but at the same time, for me it didn't always click. I didn't think the episode itself was all that engaging from a story point of view. There was nothing that really gripped me. I mean, I enjoyed seeing the character interactions, but I felt like I hardly learned anything about the main character. I felt like I got more exposition about Bruce's life and Bruce's story, but not really much about Jen, other than some really bare basics. And in all honesty, I just found the storyline that's been presented so far to be a bit boring. I don't know, I might be completely in the wrong here, but it just didn't hit me like literally every other series has. From WandaVision to Ms. Marvel, I've pretty much been hooked by every single debut episode. Until this one. And I'm not writing it off by any means, but I just think it could do with some adjustments. And most of that simply has to do with the flow of the script. In the hero origin stories, usually your training montage is safe when you actually know a bit about the character and their backstory. Here, it felt rushed. I mean, it goes, boom, she's with Bruce, to boom, she's a Hulk now, to boom, she's surpassed Bruce. I don't know, I guess I just want a little bit more of her life, more of her character. It felt like in this episode at least, Hulk was the main attraction. Bruce Banner was the main attraction, with She-Hulk simply being a point of view character that we're watching through. And I don't think that's how it should be, at least not in the first episode. But of course, that being said, that doesn't mean I disliked it completely. There were still elements I enjoyed. I enjoyed the Hulk fight. I enjoyed hearing about Jen's experiences with the world around her and taking a closer look at sexism. But I just felt like the episode needed more time. Because a big problem with the MCU shows is the pacing. They have not that many episodes, and thus they run out of time and start to rush things at the end. So when I saw She-Hulk had more episodes than normal, I'd hoped this meant that we wouldn't encounter this problem. But then the episodes are now shorter, or at least this one was, and so I'm back to worrying. But whatever, enough preamble, let's get into the episode. So we start off the episode with Jen giving a practice speech to her legal team, preparing her closing arguments for an upcoming court appearance where she's prosecuting a powerful person who used that power for personal gain at the expense of the public safety. And all the while, the dude in her legal team keeps interjecting and mansplaining and telling her what's wrong with her speech with no suggestions on how to improve it, whilst also telling her that he'd do a much better job. That everything would sound better coming from him. So yeah, this guy's a douchebag, and he also has a very punchable face. And just judging from this, I'm feeling like gender equality and female empowerment is going to be a big theme of the show. And honestly, I think that's a good thing. I mean, it is an issue that Marvel sort of skims over, skirts around. They've started to acknowledge racial issues, but never really touch on this sort of thing too much. They do make strong female heroes, but they don't delve too deeply into the struggles they'd face based on their gender. So I am pretty keen to see how they handle this in the future. And I also enjoyed that they just shut this guy down and brushed him off like he doesn't even matter, because screw that guy. Also, based on what happens later on in the episode, I do kind of enjoy the slight hypocrisy that Jen's showing here. She implies that those with power shouldn't only just not misuse it, but should actively use it to help society, for the greater good. And yet, she completely goes against that philosophy when it comes to her own powers. She only wants to be a lawyer, not a hero, even though she's got super strength. And then they had a talk to the camera segment, and this was the first instance where I felt like I was just missing something. It wasn't really all that funny to me, and it kind of felt out of place. Especially since they only do it one more time in the episode, so it feels weird. But anyway, she tells us she's a Hulk, and then we flash back to how that all came to be. And here, this scene I actually really enjoyed. Just some good old-fashioned family bonding scenes. And these type of scenes, which are sort of just about feeling out each of the characters and making everything seem happy and nice before the big dangerous confrontation, they're always so fun. It's like the scene from Age of Ultron where the Avengers are all just hanging out, having a party. Or in Iron Man when he's with the soldiers in the Jeep just having fun before they get slaughtered by the 10 Rings. And this had all the trappings of that. They bond over Jen's method of eating Cheetos with chopsticks, which actually does seem pretty smart. Cheese Dust is annoying. Bruce rambles on about how he's healing his arm and how he manages to stay in human form using the device he's created, and then Jen's theory that Captain America stayed a virgin throughout his entire life, which seems like a bit of a big call, but I guess I do understand her reasoning. And I did love how uncomfortable the whole thing made Bruce, trying to hold back on calling her out for slandering his friend. And then there's a spaceship out of nowhere, and they swerve and crash, and honestly, I was a bit surprised that she just got out of the car like that. Like, surely she'd be very badly injured from this horrific crash. Like, the only injury she seems to have is being cut on the arm. And that's only as she's climbing out of the broken window. But anyway, she opens the door to the passenger side and she manages to pull Bruce out, but his device is busted and he's about to transform, and oh no, he has a cut on his arm and it touched her cut on her arm, and now she's going to be a Hulk too. And this felt very, very rushed. And I get they wanted to get it out of the way, but still, Jesus, that's so early. And don't you still need gamma radiation to activate this stuff? Isn't that like a whole thing? Did the device leak gamma radiation? Is that what's happened here? Or is the radiation in his blood? Anyway, it doesn't really matter, because Jen finds herself waking up in the woods, with her clothes conveniently not having really been torn up at all. And she sneaks into a roadside saloon bathroom to clean herself up, where she's discovered by a bunch of women who fix up her makeup and clothes, thinking that she's a domestic violence victim. And this was wholesome. I really do hope there are people like this in the world that actually do this in real life. And speaking of real life, she's then catcalled, heckled, and followed by 3 creepers with the typical, "Hey baby, we just want to talk," all that sort of creepy shit. I kinda wish Bruce had just let her smack them around in Hulk form, if I'm being honest. And this was one scene that I thought was really well done. This is something the MCU has not touched on at all before, and it was a really jarring experience, but in a good way. So yeah, she transforms, she roars, they shit themselves, and they're saved by the intervention of Hulk, who KOs her with a spear. And she wakes up in some tropical beachside house, which is revealed to be Bruce's secret base that was funded by Tony for Bruce to work on controlling his Hulk form during the snap. And I'm glad we're sort of getting a bit of an understanding of how all that just happened, because it was very unexpected in Endgame. He then goes through an explanation of how Jen is now able to turn into a Hulk, telling her that she was exposed to a lethal dose of gamma rays. And once again, when? Did I miss this somewhere? Is this seriously just the wrist thing? Is it seriously just his blood? And apparently, since she and Bruce conveniently have similar genetic mutations or conditions or something like that, they synthesize this radiation into a Hulk transformation. Okay, sure. And what do you know? Her transformation is better than his. Is this just because of random reasons, or is this because he managed to fuse together his 2 halves, and therefore, from the blood, she got a more perfected form? Either way, it seems a bit unfair. But also I understand, because nobody wants to sit through 10 more years of her being unable to properly control her powers. At least, it doesn't interest me watching that. So I'm all here for this. And yeah, she doesn't take all this that well. And fair enough. Why would you take it well? It's not exactly great news considering the personal struggles it's inflicted on Bruce, which she'd know about because, he's her cousin. And so she has a panic attack, which is then abated through the consumption of delicious looking pancakes. And now I want pancakes. He then gives her the news that she basically has to pack up her entire life and live with him in Mexico, embarking on a multi-year journey to control her Hulk self and become a hero. Which, it doesn't seem terrible, but also given the context of her life, her job, her friends, etc., it seems like a worst case scenario. Also, I did think it was very cute that Bruce went through the effort to go through his whole personal history and figure out a training and life plan to help her out and ensure that she can live not a normal life, but as normal as you can reasonably get being a big green rage monster. And so, the training begins. Firstly with Jen locked inside a glass box to try and trigger a transformation with approaching buzzsaws, and also I really loved the Bing Bong reference here in that Bruce Banner saw Inside Out, and seemingly loved it, but I digress. She destroys the equipment in her anger, only for them to realise she's still Jen, just Hulk-powered Jen. Which gets Bruce pretty salty, and honestly I too would be pretty salty. Imagine going through the horror that was his life for 10 years, only for your younger cousin to get the same powers with seemingly none of the drawbacks and struggles. And so there goes, the first third of his syllabus. I wonder how long he spent putting that together. And so next, he tries to teach her about controlling her form and learning how to switch back and forth. First through dialectical behavioural therapy, which she mocks him for, and so he gets quite salty about that as well. And Bruce really is just taking L after L this episode, making him look like a fool. I kind of miss mysterious, borderline scary Bruce Banner. I rewatched Avengers 1 recently, and damn it, that was his best portrayal by far. I really miss that feeling of him being a walking time bomb. Unpredictable. Kinda scary. But anyway, the next day, Bruce wakes Jen up with an air horn, prompting some more rage, and fair enough, I also would be upset at that sort of wake-up call. And then we get a training montage. And you know what? I did enjoy the training montage. It's just, this whole island sequence takes up so much time, and you don't get to learn much about a character at all. And maybe that'll work out for the best in the future. But for now, with only one episode in the books, it feels like it really did need another 20 minutes or so to really kick things into gear. Anyway, though, I did enjoy hearing about some of the practicalities of being a Hulk, like reinforced furniture, or high ceilings for your home, or spandex, or having 2 wardrobes to accommodate your shifting body type. And honestly, it does sound like a nightmare. Not to mention, your food bill would probably be enormous to compensate for all the energy you'd need. I've got shivers. It's a nightmare for me. Also, I love that he keeps trying to show her how powerful they can be as a Hulk, and she just keeps upstaging him over and over again, and his rage just keeps growing and growing at being completely outclassed, even though he's the experienced veteran and she's the newbie. But it's not all bad for him, as he can still show her the finer points of Hulkdom, namely that they can drink endlessly and not get drunk. And suddenly we were watching Shrek, as there's an impromptu burping competition between green people.
Better out than in, I always say, eh, Fiona?
And then we get some more emotional discussion as Tony and Bruce's friendship is referenced, and honestly, Tony was such a good friend to Bruce. He really did look after him really well. Man, I miss Tony sometimes. He really was the glue of the MCU, and it doesn't feel the same without him. I definitely think they need somebody to fill that void at some point. But then, after all this wholesomeness, we have our drama, at last, where Bruce tries to insist that Jen remains with him and continues on her path to becoming a superhero, while she wants to remain a normal civilian and continue with her career as a lawyer, with the ridiculously expensive degree that she has and all those years of college and law school. And this is actually a very rational point of view to have, but at the same time, I don't think it's realistic. After all, in this universe, superheroes get hunted by everybody, so good luck. Also, she kind of rages at him for sort of mansplaining her life to her and implying that she doesn't have control over her emotional state, and pretty much tears him a new one, and also shows that she can transform at will. She then tries to leave and calls out all his life choices, and they begin to brawl. And there really isn't much else to say other than this brawl was awesome. It wasn't really anything too exciting, and obviously you don't want to show off everything too early, but we did get some flashes of Savage Hulk, which I found exciting. And I'm thinking that that version of Hulk is going to come back one day for one last rodeo. At least, I hope so. And then they smashed the bar. And I think everybody felt Bruce's anguish with his line, "My bar!" Very relatable. Whenever I break anything I'm even slightly attached to, that is my reaction. But anyway, they have time to cool off and Bruce lets her go and live her life, with the offer to return and continue learning being open any time. We then cut back to the present, where Jennifer tells us that she was right and Bruce was wrong, and she doesn't have to be a Hulk at all, until she's in court only hours later when she delivers her closing arguments. Also, side note before we continue, the defense lawyer for this guy sucks. Did he know people's lives were in danger? He answers debatable, and depends on your definition of knowing. Like what? What kind of idiot defense is that? Is he guilty? Maybe, depends on your point of view. Fire this lawyer. But anyway, this new villain, the first villain of the show, gets absolutely clapped. See ya, punk. Yeah, I kind of thought she'd be a bit of a bigger villain than that based on the trailer, but okay. This part was actually funny. And then Bruce reveals in a mid-credit scene that Captain America was not a virgin before he went back into the past, so congratulations, Captain. And yeah, that's the end of the episode. Like I said, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good, but there's definitely room to improve. But as always, these are just my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? You like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know.